Hi, I'm Chantal.
And I'm Nikki, and we're the faces and the voices behind Agile Caribbean Link. So today we have a very special guest with us, D Ray Freeman. He's an Agile executive, a transformational leader, an author, and there's so many more titles that we could add. But we'll allow him just to introduce himself and tell us a little bit about him.
Well, hello. First, thank you for allowing me to be here. I appreciate this opportunity so much. Yes, my name is D Ray Freeman. I'm coming to you from Los Angeles, California right now. Yes. So I've lived here for about 4 years. Also lived in Kingston for a while in 2018 and 2017. So I have some experience there, but what brings me into the Agile world is I've been doing business transformation for about 24 years now. And across that time frame has taken me from project management into solution management and all the way up to executive advisory, which is what I do now as a management consultant. So my role today is to work with large corporations around the world and help their executive teams as well as their operational teams to deliver whatever value that company is trying to achieve. If you're a bank, you need to do certain things to be a better bank. If you're, whatever your type of company is, there are ways of improving, and I work with a great team of people who we come in and help organizations to thrive. That's our product.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Sounds
Awesome.
amazing, D Ray. So one other question rather, if you could select or you needed to select only one word, like one single word that captures everything that represents who D Ray is, what would that word be?
I'd have to say it's adaptable. Even as we're speaking, I just kind of scribble stuff down. Adaptable is a first thing that comes to mind is that because for me, I've always had to be adaptable. There's things that have come into my life that have been curveballs, and I never wanted to default to a plan B. I always wanted my plan A to have curves. So plan A can turn at any moment and be able to still navigate to where I'm trying to get to. So being adaptable has helped me to become who I am today and to help other people become who they want to be tomorrow.
Nice. Nice to
And
say.
yeah, that's such an interesting perspective because usually when you think about adaptable, you think, okay, if plan A doesn't work, then I have a plan B. If plan B doesn't work, then I can go all the way to Z. But still having that plan A with curves and figuring
Yes.
out how to navigate all the corners and the potholes and everything to get to that goal, like that's a
Oh,
really
yes.
interesting perspective.
Just navigating the
Definitely.
potholes. I remember that from driving in Kingston.
Much has not changed since you've
No,
left
it
Zurich.
hasn't.
Oh man,
So
that's nice.
let's take the conversation now to our first topic where we're going to talk about, how can Agile be applied outside of a business context? We're used to talking about Agile when it comes to project management, when it comes to software development, but what does it look like and what does it mean to say, hey, this is what Agile means, and why would you think or say that it's a concept that can be applied outside of businesses?
Mm. Outside of business, I think Agile can be applied the same way that the word Agile is applied with a small a instead of a capital A. It means the ability to move swiftly. And in most of our cases, when we make moves, we want to do them based on proper information that we've received. So the time to decision making can be what inhibits us from making smart moves.
That's
So
right.
when people get stuck, it's not that they're physically stuck, it's that they can't make a decision of which way to go, of where to go next. So I think using Agile as a way to unlock decision making is the key to the future of Agile, and the way that it can be used by anybody unlock decision making that allows you to move forward faster.
Nice.
So what I'd want to hear from you, D Ray, is in even your personal life, like what are some of the ways that you have actually applied Agile? Like, or how have you seen others apply Agile outside of business?
A great way of applying outside agility to your life, and instead of just applying it to business, is the way people plan. A lot of times we make one plan and try to stick to that plan forever. Even in certain cultures, that plan may be made by parents or other family members who may have put a plan in place for you. And people may feel like, I have to stick to this plan. But being agile means, it doesn't mean that your plan is wishy-washy, but it means that your plan is able to be flexed based on new information. So if you discover that you're going in the wrong direction, you should not keep going in that direction. So new information says, I should turn. So we should constantly be looking for new information so we can make the proper decisions and we don't get stuck, or we don't go down wrong paths. And a way that I've applied that and seen that applied on a more personal level is even within my own home. My wife and I, we don't have a structured agile meeting every day or a scrum stand-up. However, we do have common goals that are common to our household, our family. We have common goals that we want to accomplish. And we need to meet on those goals on a daily basis. Like what can we do to help one another to achieve what we're trying to achieve for that day? How can we support each other towards our family goals every day? And they should be aligned. One of the challenges that happens, the same in organizations that happens in homes, is that there's different agendas. And when one has an agenda that doesn't comply with the other, there's conflict, there's discourse, and there's not the ability to thrive. But when all are working together and are trying to achieve a value together, then there's common thriving. So when we implemented that into our way of living, it caused us to become more successful repetitively. And it just changed the way that we interacted with not only ourselves amongst one another, but with other people, and the way that we lead other people and grow our own communities. So I think that's the way that you can really bring it in to your personal life, is start having some daily plannings with the people that you live with. And what are you going to accomplish today?
Right.
And is there anything that I can help you with that would make your day more successful, or would make your day slightly easier than maybe it would have been without that help? If we think about it in that way, that's scaling. That's, you were planning to do that. Oh, I was planning to do that also. Maybe we can work together on that. So now we've combined our resources to make, instead of two efforts separately, to make one effort, and that we can both benefit from. We've multiplied our benefit by using the same effort. Same can be applied at home.
Nice.
And funny enough, when you were mentioning just having that alignment session pretty much on that communication, like it brought to mind recently, just preparing for Christmas dinner. I mean, it's very simple, but when you thought about the fact that, okay, so we needed groceries and we needed to perhaps go to the meat shop, and as opposed to everyone going out, okay, I'm just going to get the chicken and somebody else goes somewhere else to get the ham, like just coordinating the efforts to say, okay, so as a family, this is what we want to eat for Christmas dinner. Like, who is going on the road? Where do you intend to go? And just make that plan there. And it helps, like, as you said, it's very practical. And I would want to say as well, not to be intimidated if you hear the word planning, because it's pretty much just a conversation.
Correct.
It's just communicating with your family members, friends, your teams, anybody. So those were the two things that stuck out for me. The fact that you just still need to have communication, you still need to have alignment, no matter
Most
where it is
definitely.
that you're applying Agile. Yeah.
So true.
Yeah. So we had another question. You kind of touched on it, but we wanted to also get from you. What is that one thing? So for some of us who are still very new with Agile, we've heard it, we want to perhaps try in our personal lives. Like, what's that one thing, that one practical thing that you'd recommend that we can start trying?
I think that writing things down, making a list of all items that are important to you. And I like to do it very practically is write them down on a bunch of different sticky notes. I use these all the time. So each idea that you have, if you can put those ideas onto sticky notes and put them somewhere just randomly in a cluster somewhere, and then to go through those items and start to cluster them together to see, are there any common themes of where what you're thinking about? What's in your head? Are there any common themes? And as you break them down into groups, you should end up with 3 or 4 separate groups of things that you've identified. And then start to prioritize, well, out of this group of things, if I could only do one out of this group of things, what would I prioritize? What would be the number one thing? And if you make that your top priority, and what can I accomplish today towards that top priority? Can that whole thing be done today? Or do I need to break it into smaller pieces that it's going to take multiple days? I think just taking that approach leads you down a pathway of agility. It's not necessarily agile, but those of us familiar with agile can see the agileness creeping into it. The big things broken down into small things, delivered iteratively. We start to see agile take place, but you don't have to teach anybody agile. You don't have to give them all of the terminology of Scrum in order for them to behave in an agile manner. You just have to give them the mechanism to be able to start those habits. And if you start doing those habits, you become agile. It's not that you learn the tools, you become agile because you start doing those habits. That's a great way to start.
And it becomes a mindset change too, because you're changing your approach to everything. You're changing your approach to the things you're trying to get done and how you choose to get it done. So really like that one point there.
Very true. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So if we were to take the conversation now back to the business context, which is where we're more familiar with applying Agile, especially in the Caribbean where Agile is still embryonic, it's still in its baby stage, we want to try and help organizations transform. And if it is that we're having this conversation about how, organization goes about, adopting Agile, moving from a command and control point of view, what are some of the things that we need to bear in mind? And I want us to start a conversation with discussing what are indicators that an organization needs to start thinking about changing their approach to their business transformation.
I've had some experience in the Caribbean of doing business with large organizations there and bringing in an agile mindset or agile thinking. And one of the key barriers that we recognize right away is that there are silos that exist in organizations. And because of those silos, that creates some competition in between each one. I mean, imagine them as being small fiefdoms within a kingdom, the kingdom being the entire corporation itself. And it has these little hierarchies that start to evolve within the kingdom. And they grow in power because maybe they have more revenue or support or whatever, but it becomes protective to protect this part of the hierarchy, grow this hierarchy, make sure that we're visible and have funding and we move forward, we're strong. Right. But they don't often think about how that impacts the other intersecting areas. If you're in sales and you really beef up sales, but you don't beef up fulfillment, well, that doesn't matter. You've sold a lot, but you're not able to fulfill as much as you're selling. Right. So the improvement has to be across a system. And I think that's one of the challenges that many organizations fail to see is that improving the system is what is necessary. And that is going to require breaking down some of those silos and creating an environment where it is safe to work together. It is safe to work across boundaries. And not only is it safe, but it is part of our common goal, our common mission as an organization is to drive value, not to drive hierarchy. That's what has to change.
Definitely agree. But even based on what you said, D Ray, what are some of the other barriers to actually encouraging that true change that you have seen? And how is it that persons can mitigate or try to avoid those challenges?
You know, some of those challenges have to do with how organizations think that they should address this problem. You know, many have heard of Agile and they've heard of the stories of Agile. This methodology brought over a 200% gain in an organization. They've read case studies. So they think that they should plug that into their organization and it will work the same. But that concept rarely ever works. You cannot just plug in an element. Sometimes I use an analogy of a race car. A race car is a very fine-tuned machine to do racing. You know, it's designed to take on the tracks and the wear and tear that goes onto a race car. But if you took the average sedan that a person drives back and forth in the city or to work, it's not a race car. So you can't just put an engine in it, a racing engine, and call it a race car. Or you can't just put some racing tires on it and call it a race car. Because it won't perform like a race car just because you add that element to it. So organizations are the same way. You've heard about this great element, and now you think that you are able to plug it in and it's just going to operate. Same concept. For now, there are standard cars that become race cars because they enhance every element. They enhance the body, the transmission, the tires, the brakes, every part of it becomes a race car. And then it's able to compete and perform as a race car. So if we apply that same mentality to our organizations and figure out a way, how do we work together as a large organization to improve the overall race car that we're driving, or to improve our overall organization, versus how do we just make our tires better, or how do we just make our engine better?
And I think what's also important about this analogy, and it brought to mind, you know, with the whole race car thing, a lot of organization immediately thinks that adopting Agile means delivering faster. And I want you to talk about that a little bit more, because using that race car analogy, that's what came to my mind. You know, organization automatically, they just jump onto the bandwagon that, you know, adopting Agile, we're going to deliver faster, which means we're going to, you know, make more money quicker, and et cetera, et cetera. So how would you handle that part of the conversation, the side of the conversation, when organizations just immediately just say, hey, Agile, deliver faster? If we're not delivering faster, that means something is wrong. You know, let's have that conversation now. How would you approach that part of the conversation?
Before you start answering though, I'd like to add delivering faster, but not necessarily trying out anything new or trying new things or being willing to just fail fast, learn early, all of that. It's just literally being able to move faster to market.
You know, I think organizations need to start where they are and not try to take a cookie cutter approach or just a plug and play approach.
Right.
There's a lot of frameworks out there. There's a lot of different methodologies that are very popular. They market themselves a lot. There's a lot of material out there for them. But it doesn't mean that that methodology is what fixes or what automatically makes faster value, faster time to market, speed to market. It doesn't mean that that happens automatically. What we're seeking to build is agility, not agile. So that's the ability to move faster, not just the mechanisms that say you can.
Mhm.
So that ability comes from changing, it's moving several levers within the organization to bring about that agility. So some of that may be changing the way leaders lead. Some of it may be changing the nomenclature or the terminology that's used across the organization. It may be just changing the culture of work around the company that creates a new environment for people to thrive in. Um, Sometimes those things are just as important, if not more important, than just bringing in a new process. If you can marry behaviors with process and create a culture around that type of delivery, reward that type of collaboration, then you have continuous growth, continuous improvement in your organization. But it's necessary to change all of those things, not just to plug in Agile or any framework.
Completely
I,
agree with you.
yeah, I like that you started there because it seems when persons think about agile, they don't necessarily associate it with agility.
Yes.
And I think two persons try to say agile, okay, automatically agile, what's a framework I'm going to use? So even before figuring out where am I and what do we need to start improving, even some small areas, it's okay. So what framework are we going to use? Millions of people are using Scrum, so let's try Scrum.
Yeah.
Okay, that team may not be a Scrum team. Let us try Kanban. Let us try, and it just automatically becomes pretty much war of which framework will win in an organization. And even in looking at the various teams, it may not differ because Scrum may have worked for one specific team based on what it is that they are trying to achieve, but it's not necessarily going to cut across all the teams within the organization. So how do you recommend that that companies also try to do that assessment to understand? I'm starting here, but where do I really start? I decided today that we're starting an agile transformation or agile journey rather. Practically, what's the first thing that we should start? Like, what will it look like when we just start?
I think the question is actually part of the answer is determining what does success look like. I think that conversation is one that people don't have enough. What does it look like to win?
True. Yeah.
How do we measure what success is?
Yeah.
Right.
If putting in agile is the measure of success, you're not winning. If you're just checking the box to say, well, yes, we have stand-ups, yes, we have
Right.
Yeah.
Scrum, that's not the definition of winning. So organizations have to define what is it that you're trying to solve. If our sales down, then that's the problem we're trying to solve.
Right.
Is our customers leaving and going to a competitor? Well, let's try to solve that problem. Let's ask why. Let's talk about that and put together a plan for solving that problem. Let's not put in a methodology. Let's
Yeah.
solve the problems that are there.
Yeah.
If we take that
And
approach, we win.
yeah, and that's something that one of our colleagues, it always resonates with us. And she always reminded us that we should just, agile, it's about approaching everything with your common sense. It's not scientific. It's not, you know, anything that is so unbeknownst to us and it's so new and it's so unfamiliar. Agile is just being practical, and I really appreciate the way you've articulated that side of things where it just becomes what does success look like? What is the problem we're trying to solve? And having answered those questions, then you would immediately understand where you need to get started on your journey of transformation. And it has nothing to do with using a framework. I really
Right.
appreciate this perspective where it has nothing to do with a framework. It's just all about being practical. What does success look like? What is the problem we're trying to solve? Let's start there. How do we start? What is a plan?
Right.
Definitely. Yes.
Yes.
So, D Ray, what's the one key ingredient that you would say that organizations need when they actually make this decision? And I'm not going to say to become agile, but rather to start about to use agile again, but to start their journey of being more, of embracing agility, of being able
Yes.
to respond quicker, of being able just to understand what it is to empower your teammates, how it is that you have the conversation, how it is that we're no longer competitors in all our small silos, but as an organization, we're all rowing the boat in one direction
Mm.
towards one
Mhm.
key goal. Like,
Right.
what's that must have ingredient for any organization?
You know, word that comes to mind for me is culture.
Mm.
And there's several reasons behind that. One is a data-driven reason. I'm a
Mhm.
big follower of the State of Agile report that's done by Version 1. It's been done for the last 14 years in a row. And
Mhm.
what they do is they go and they interview some of the largest and smallest companies around the entire globe. There's thousands of companies that they interview, and people who are either new agile practitioners all the way to the most seasoned agile practitioners. And there's a set of questions and things, but one of the things that they measure is what makes agile transformations fail. What is the most common
Mhm.
element that makes them fail? And for the last 14 years in a row, the top number one answer was culture. That the
Mhm.
culture is not conducive with an agile mindset nor frameworks, and
Mhm.
that it just doesn't take. So I've always taken that as my first and foremost approach to transformation is culture. How do we transform culture that
Mhm.
brings about a mindset that can drive agility? So culture to drive agility is the key ingredient to making transformation stick.
Yeah. And then having made your agility and your agile transformation stick, what would you say are success indicators that agile is actually working for your company?
Mm. You know, some key indicators that your method or your process is working is
Mhm.
usually that there's some performance metrics that you've built into it to
Mhm.
evaluate that. Anyone who's done transformation before, it's never good enough to just say we've made the organization better or faster or greater, or you know, any of
Right.
those types of words. Just you can't measure that in any kind of way. So you have to have something to
Mhm.
show that you've moved the needle in some area. So if you take
Mhm.
that approach and use it to solve an objective, then the
Mhm.
key results that you achieve are parts of achieving a real objective. An example I use on a personal basis is imagine you set a goal of getting healthy. You can say, I want to get healthy. Well, that sounds good. It sounds really good, but what does that mean? How do you know that you've done it? How do you know
Yeah.
you've been successful
Yeah.
in getting healthy? Because that word means so much. So you have to assign some key results to that. Like,
Yeah.
what are the
Right.
key indicators that let you know you're getting healthy? And how can you aspire to those and measure those?
Yeah.
Perhaps it is that I'm exercising 5 times per week.
Mhm.
You can measure that. If you only do 3 times per
Right.
week, you're part of the way. If you only do 1 time per week, you're part of the way, but it's measurable as part of the effort of getting healthy. Maybe you have cut calories by 50%, or you've cut
Mhm.
salt by, some attribute that is measurable.
Yeah.
If you can start to look at things in that way, then your achievements actually achieve goals that are measurable.
Mhm.
I know I'm getting
Mhm.
healthy because
Yeah.
I've cut calories, because I'm exercising, because I've cut salt.
Yeah. Mhm.
I know my organization is growing because I've cut turnover, because I am employing more women in leadership positions,
Mhm.
because these things are happening. That's
Yeah.
how you know your organization is succeeding. The success of an organization shouldn't be measured on how agile is being practiced or whether or not it's being practiced, whether or not
Mhm.
you're having stand-ups or sprint plannings, or how often you have
Right.
showcases or demos. Forget about that. It's more,
Yeah.
Is your organization succeeding? Are you meeting the objectives that you've set out for your organization? That's the
Yeah.
key that should be measured.
Right, round of applause for that answer. Well,
Thank you.
Deary, this has been an amazing conversation. But before we leave, we wanted to get from you, are there any tips that you want to leave with us? Whether it
Mhm.
is how it is that you practice agile outside of business or within
Mhm.
an organization, what can we do better?
Hmm. You know, my best tips for anyone on agile journey is to think about the language that you use. Language is so impactful for how we make progress forward.
Mhm,
If a
mhm,
person says, "I want to fail forward," to someone else, that may
Mhm.
sound terrible. Like, I don't want to
Mhm.
fail. But if
Mhm.
someone says, "I want to test and learn,"
Mhm.
well, the application of both of those is the same, but the
right.
language may drive one person to want to test and learn to achieve, but the fail
Mhm.
fast may sound like, oh, that's just too much. I don't like to fail.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
bringing in the right language is a big driver in what motivates us to want to do something
Mhm,
different. So that's my key is learn the
Mhm.
words and find the words that give you motivation. And as
Yeah.
leaders, if you're leading agility, find the words that motivate the people who you're trying to lead.
Mhm.
If they're motivated by togetherness, then speak
Mhm.
to them about
right.
the way that you can work together to bring about value
Mhm.
that's going to drive value across your economy, across the people. You know, tell them the stories about how this is going to impact them. If they're
Mhm,
driven by finance and by numbers and facts, then show them how much more efficient the organization is becoming. Show them how you're measuring value and attributing that to the success of your business units, of your
Mhm.
overall organization. So use the language that gives people the motivation to want to be part of the transformation and part of the overall
Yeah.
goal. It's not the same. We don't all think the same. And the same things that are
right.
important to one person may not be important to another. So as
Yeah.
leaders, find a way to connect with people using the right language that motivates
Mhm,
agility. And if you can
Yeah.
do that, you will create an agile environment or an environment of agility.
Yeah. And as you mentioned the togetherness, you previously told us about, at Adaptovate, how you guys refer to
mhm,
yourselves as adaptivators. And I know each organization may not be able to do the same thing, where they come up with a catchy word to say, we're all adaptivators. And even though it's not a real word, just hearing it, you can figure out, okay, what it means. And I can understand why as a member, you'd feel empowered and motivated by just calling
mhm,
each other adaptivators. And I'd want to take the language discussion a little bit further because it's something I know is very near and dear to our hearts, Nikki, where even something as simple as the context within which we use certain words, where we use resources to talk about people instead of just regarding them as people, that also has something to do with somebody's psyche
mhm.
when you regard them as a resource rather than just treating them and calling
Yeah.
them a person or as people. So I really really like that last tip that you shared. It's really
Mhm,
very, it's impactful, and it's common sense too, just to be mindful of the language. But it's something that if we're not careful,
Yes,
is something that just easily slips under the cracks, and we just ignore that one little point that we can change as well.
yeah.
most definitely. Very, very good point. We are people. We
Mhm,
we need human motivation more than we need a plan. I heard a speaker recently, and he was talking about Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King, his famous words were, "I have a dream," right? And
mhm,
people can get on board when you say, "I have a dream," or they feel like there's a vision of hope
mhm.
somewhere. If he had came to the podium and said, "I have a plan," I don't think he would have got the same following.
That's true. That's so true. But you also said the word, D Ray, you said connection in terms of leaders needing to speak to their people and understand what motivates them. And that requires not that distance. I'm not up here and you're here and I have no idea what motivates you. It requires that I have some form of connection, some kind of interaction, some kind of relationship to understand you, Chantal, this is what motivates you. So if I talk like this will actually mean something to you, because can't put us all in one big barrel.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Treat people like people.
Amen.
The
Yeah,
very first
definitely.
thing in the Agile Manifesto, the very first value says we value individuals and interactions
Interaction.
over processes and tools. So
Mhm.
what we're talking about is individuals and the interactions
Yeah.
between them. Why not focus
Right.
on that first?
Yeah.
For some odd reason, we all go
Yeah.
to the second part. We say, well,
That's true.
let's get some processes and tools.
Mm.
And it's just
Yeah.
the wrong way to approach it, because it
Yeah.
clearly states we value people over process.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Definitely. Definitely. Well, Ray, we just wanted to say thank you so much for spending this time and having this conversation with us. I think, giving us the different perspectives that you have, from a non-business context to, an agile transformation, the conversation has been fruitful. And I'm sure our audience will find it meaningful. So thank you so
Mhm.
much for your time. And thank you so much for having this conversation with us.
Yeah,
And we're
man.
looking forward to having more conversations like this too.
Definitely.
Yes, always please
And
to
remember,
join me.
yes, I remember we have dubbed you an honorary Jamaican for your time spent here and knowing how to say yeah, man, and those things. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Well, thank you so much. I
Really
look
appreciate
forward to
you.
the day when the world goes back to normal and I can visit your beautiful country again. I can't wait. I'm looking
Yeah,
forward to
man.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah, man.
sounds
Thank you so
amazing.
much.
Okay.
All
Ladies,
right.
again, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you. Have a
No
good day,
problem.
and we talk again
You
soon.
too.
You
Yeah,
too.
man.
Bye.
Blessing.
I'm going to